Okay, I've gotten my cue to get started, so I will go ahead and do so. What a great turnout! I see some familiar names. Great to see you all here. And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on Automate with AppSheet, demo with a Google Cloud Engineer. I'm super excited about this one as I love the product. Wursta is partnering with Google to deliver an AppSheet demo session today. In this session, you'll see a deep dive into the product, some common use cases, as well as be able to ask some questions that you may have about AppSheet. This deep dive will show you the product in action so you can apply it to your team. My name is Patrick Della Peruta. I'm the practice lead for digital workplace here at Wursta. And joining me today is Kevin Apodaca, cloud engineer at Google. Hi, Kevin. Just a couple of logisticals. This meeting is being recorded. All registrants will receive a link to view it later this week. We do ask that you stay on mute because there is a nice amount of people here today. You can submit questions anytime using the Meet chat. We will answer them at the end of the presentation. We will also be using the polls feature throughout the chat, so feel free to bring up the activities icon, the lower right-hand corner of your screen. It's got the triangle, circle, and square on it. So the polls will be posted there. And feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn. Our marketing team will drop links to our LinkedIn profiles there in the chat, so feel free to connect with us. We'd love to connect with you. In case you didn't know this already, this event is being hosted by Wursta, and our mission is to help organizations maximize their use of the cloud to compete in a modern world. We work side by side to help people make good technology decisions and grow their businesses in ways they wouldn't have the ability to do otherwise. This helps organizations develop cultures of continuous innovation powered by real-time collaboration. But before we get started, we'll do our first poll of the day. How many of you are currently used or have used AppSheet? Let's take a look at the polls. I love the real-time data. A couple of what is that? A couple of yeses, a couple of lots of nos. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So for those of you who have used it, hopefully, and I expect that you'll learn a couple of things here, as I did listening to Kevin and working with Kevin on building this. For those of you who don't know what AppSheet is, we'll definitely get into that. So we should have here something to cover for everybody here. So with that said, I will pass it off to Kevin.
Great. Thanks, Patrick. And thank you all of you for being here today. My name is Kevin. I am a Google Cloud engineer. I've been at Google for around 10 months, and I've been playing around with AppSheet the entire time practically. So really happy to talk about that with you all today. So, let's get started. What is it? What are we talking about? So AppSheet is Google's no-code platform that helps enable innovation everywhere. And what does that actually mean? So what happens over time is organizations, employers develop these established and repeatable tasks that one might perform as part of your day-to-day role. Things like sharing reports, performing inspections, processing support tickets, or tracking new hire applications. So applications that are developed on AppSheet are digitized and streamlined. So all these processes enable citizen developers and IT professionals to develop intuitive apps with built-in automations. So in the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the big key benefits of AppSheet, starting with it being no code. So by being no code, the risk of rogue code is eliminated. And so as a result, we can accelerate the development process immensely, up to 10x. Additionally, there's always been this kind of challenge that people in the IT sector, and some of you might be familiar, have to face. You have to balance empowering employees to do their best work while at the same time minimizing the risk and maintaining proper security and governance. So AppSheet helps solve this challenge by providing software that is easy to use and it can address a wide variety of use cases and connects to the appropriate enterprise software, and at the same time maintains security and allows you, the user, to govern and control your own data, your functionality, as well as your users. So the next slide, we can talk a little bit about some of the common use cases across the enterprise. I mentioned a couple previously, sharing reports, support ticketing, stuff like that. But here you can see a larger set of examples where the platform can really shine. Some of the ones I'll call out are processes such as safety inspections and support ticketing, as well as employee onboarding and team workflows. Many of these workflows are traditionally being done with pen and paper, desktop computers, and archaic desktop software that makes it difficult to get things done quickly and efficiently. So, in the next couple of minutes, we'll be going over how AppSheet can come into play to digitize some of these processes by doing a live demo. So, what I'm going to do now is start sharing my screen, and we'll actually create an application in real time. But just to set up kind of the scenario, we are taking the place of a consulting company in the tech sector that I am the manager of. And as a manager, I want to know what my employees' particular skill sets are in terms of programming languages or frameworks or certifications, so that at a moment's notice, I can quickly pull up and say, hey, this person has talent in this skill set. I'm going to give them a call because a particular prospect that I'm in just happens to need that. So that is the setup. And with that being said, I will share my screen. Okay, perfect. So I should be sharing my screen now. Let me know with thumbs up or thumbs down if you all can see this fine. Zoom in, zoom out. Okay,
Good.
looks like all good. Perfect. So all I've done so far is just go to appsheet.com and I signed in with my Google account. So what I'm going to do is make a new app, start with my own data. We can use templates, and some of the templates are really cool, really expansive, which we can check out later. But I will just choose my own data. And I will call this the skills directory app version 1. And I will put this as a education and training application, choose my data. And what you can see here is this is pulling up my Google Drive where I have prepared a sheet for this demo. And I will quickly show you that just so you can know what kind of data I'm working with. Okay. So I'm sharing that tab with you all now. As you can see, this is pretty straightforward. It just has the name of some of my employees, programming languages that they focus on, frameworks that they might have expertise in, as well as logistical things such as who their manager is, what team they belong to, email, phone number, profile picture. So I'll stop sharing that and I'll go back to the AppSheet app itself. Great. So as you can see, the app is ready. And what Google has done in the background is take that spreadsheet that I just showed you, analyzed what those columns were, and made some smart predictions using AI and ML to generate an application for me. And so what I have here is the information from the employees, their profile pictures, their IDs, their names, as well as a grouping based on the manager and a button for email. So already, without me having to do any sort of extra coding, no added functionality, all I said was, hey, just look at this spreadsheet and give me an app. And already, this is already a super useful application. I can click on that plus and create a new employee essentially with different managers, different emails, and pictures. But like we said, we want to take this a little bit further to explore what we can really do with it. So I'm going to go ahead and customize the app. And what you're seeing now is the AppSheet editor. It's split up into 3 main components. The left-hand side is our navigation. The middle is where we can actually see the context and edit and play around with all of our data. And you can just keep an eye on that live preview on the right-hand side. So I'll just fill out some quick logistical things for the application by filling out the app properties. So I'll throw in a quick description, which is that context that I talked about, what the purpose of the application is. We'll select the category. It's a business solution. And since we are in the tech sector, I'll just place that technology there. And a short description. Like I mentioned, we're a consulting company, so we'll put in a fancy little slogan there. Great. Now we're going to move on to data. And this is really where we're going to play around with what data are we using? How are we using it? How are we showcasing it? So there is that one table, which is the one pulled in from Google spreadsheets. So I can open that up and I can do things like allow updates to it, but I want to focus more on the columns. So again, this is just that same format that we saw in the spreadsheet, just with some additional information. For the purposes of this application, I want to be able, as a manager or as an employee, to update my skill set. Maybe I learned a different language. Maybe I specialized in a different framework, or I got this new certification. So from the app, I want to be able to update that so people can know that, hey, I can now be a helpful resource for that particular skill set. So I will just make everything else uneditable except for the programming language and the framework. Cool. And I'll just do some quick checking here. All this looks good. Perfect. I think we're good. And that's really all I want to manipulate from the data. Everything else is just going to be us adding to it. There's nothing else that I need to worry about formatting. So now I'll move on to the actual UX, where we can customize what this application looks like. Now, Google did a pretty good job of, giving me some of the important information, such as the names and profile pictures. But of course, I want to make this look a little bit more tailored to my specific needs. So I will tackle that primary view, which is what you're seeing on the right-hand side. And I will change this to be a card. So we'll see some changes over there. The position, I want this to be in the menu so that I can just quickly pull it up from this menu item here. Sorting by, I like that it sorts by the name in ascending order, but I don't want it to group by manager. I want to group this by team because it might make it easier for me. And I also don't really care to know how many people are in each team, so I'll disable that. Cool. So now let's talk about the layout a little bit. It's selected large. There's a lot of info, but I want to make it look different. So I'll select list. I will pick up that placeholder with the images. Icon is fine, but I can just make it round. Next, what I want for that title, the name is fine. And subtitle, again, there it is. It picked up a little bit of more context and it gave me the programming languages that I want to showcase there. Cool. And so you notice these three little dots. I can also customize the action items from here. So just based off the context of the spreadsheet, it knows, hey, maybe you want to text this person, give them a call, or delete them. But I want to customize this a little bit. So let me click on that. First action that I want to do is compose an email. The second action that I want to do is, let's say, go to their detailed page. And third action, I will, let's say, call phone. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and save, give it a couple seconds to refresh, and then we will try those options again. Okay, cool. So now I have already kind of achieved one of my main requirements of the scenario, which is I want to quickly be able to identify who has a specialization in a language and shoot them a quick email. So if I were to click on this now, you can't see this, but it just opened up my inbox application on my computer, and we'll showcase this on the phone so you can see what that functionality looks like. Awesome. So I think I'm actually pretty happy with the way that this looks. I can see who the teams are, who each person is, what their languages are. And at a moment's notice, I could just search and say, hey, I need somebody with experience in assembly. Give me those people. There we go. There's Greg. So I can just click on him and give him a call, for instance. So I'll take a quick pause. If there's any questions, either from the audience or the hosts.
I don't see any questions coming in yet. Kevin, this is super impressive, and just the way that Google can pick up based on that data set and make some accurate determinations on what you're trying to do with that data, and then slightly editing the application to sort of fit what you're looking for. Super impressive. Curious, could you do something like if somebody did go in and edit their skill set, can that generate like an email notification to maybe their manager or admins or something like that to let us know that somebody's updated their skill set? Could you do something like that?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Patrick. And so in short, the answer is yes, and we'll actually do that a little bit further. But before we jump into that, we can just clean up a little bit of the application itself, make it a little bit more personalized to my brand, my company. But yeah, we will definitely touch on some of those automations.
Awesome.
So as a way of cleaning up, every single one of these little profiles, I can click on them and get a detailed perspective from that user. So I heard a ping. Let me see. What fields does the search feature use? Wondering if I can locate all contacts with Python. Yeah, so at the moment, search will search across everything that I have labeled here in data, columns, and there is a column here for search. So right now it can search through all these fields that have a blue check mark, which is everything except for the icon and the row number. So yes, you could definitely do something like search for Python. And this will give me everybody that finds Python, whether it's in any one of these columns for whatever reason. Hopefully that answers the question. It is based off the columns that have the search feature enabled in that data section.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Yep. Cool. So let's clean up this little UX here. So you'll notice all I've really played with is the primary view, the employees, and I played around with that and I customized it. But there's also what are called system views, and that's what AppSheet is able to generate based on, again, the context of the application. So the employee detail, for example, is that page. I didn't create it. It's just said, hey, based off of the context, you might want a detailed version of this. So let me quickly customize it, and then I'll jump back to that question. I did hear the ping. So main image, don't really need to have it there. Let's do the main header column. I want that to be the name of my employee. Then some quick edits, because I do want to be able to update these two particular fields, the language and the frameworks. And you saw that it just gave me those two suggestions. And again, that's just because I made everything else uneditable. Cool. And now let's just do the column order real quick. We'll do the language, frameworks, the manager, the team, and the person's profile picture. And then the rest, we could just leave it there. Okay, perfect. This looks like a little bit more what I want, but it looks, kind of basic, a little bit off to the side. I want this to be side by side. There we go. We'll set the image to fill, set some nested rows. Okay, cool. So far, so good. Let me choose an actual display name for this. I will call this the detail page. And again, just another quick cleanup that we can do. We can personalize the brand to make it look more like my company's application and not just, a quick little generic app. So I would choose my company colors. I would choose my app logo, which I will, for this case, just use a sample one. Choose that. Launch image. So you could imagine this is a custom splash screen for your company that maybe your designers have come up with. And I will show the view name, show the logo, and I will also just change the style to be fully colored. So now you saw those changes up there. Now there's my company logo up there. There's the page. And you can see it translates to the other screens as well. Cool. Now, last part of cleaning it, I can do what are called format rules. And again, this isn't just me writing code that will generate these things. This is me writing a very simple expression. I want the names of all of my employees to be blue, for instance. And so common use case you might use this for is, hey, managers need to be labeled a different color, or specific text needs to be highlighted in a different color based on X requirement. You can write those expressions there. Cool.
So cool.
So now with that, let me take a quick pause and go back to the questions. I heard some pings there. Some people are putting questions in the Q&A. Okay.
In the Q&A, yeah. I think we're going to save them for the end, Kevin, so we can move on if you want to go to the next next part of the demo. Just a quick question. So the preview there on the right is showing the mobile view. That can be expanded to look at like a tablet view or a web view as well, right?
Yep, that's right. So I have this little button here to open it in tablet view, so you can see what that might look like. And additionally, if I just press the open in tab button, and I'll quickly share that here. This is that same application running on a quote unquote desktop setting. So you can see I have that same information.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Cool. So I'm going to go switch back to mobile, and let's actually talk about some of that behavior and automation that we can play with. So let's create a new action. And I want to be a main call button. So we created a call action. This time we're just going to have an additional little button there that I can just toggle real quickly. I'll call this call employee using the record of the employees. And so what I want to do is start a phone call to who? Well, let's see. I could write one of these fancy little expressions that people might be used to in Excel or in spreadsheets. Or I could just use the Data Explorer and say, hey, just give me that person's phone and save it. There we go. Start a phone call to whatever phone number is there. Let me just change the appearance here. The display name, I will just say, don't mind my spelling, concatenate. So all this is doing is just putting the word call before the name of the person, and this is just coming from the spreadsheet. So that's as close to code as we're going to do here. It's just writing a very simple spreadsheet formula. And the action item icon, I'm sorry, the phone there. Save that. Wait for that to refresh. And now you can see I click on Anthony's profile and I can call that person's name. That name is pulled down from that spreadsheet. Click it. And for me on Mac, it opens up FaceTime, but we'll see what it does on an actual mobile application. Now, let's touch on automation. And let's actually do what Patrick had asked about. Let's set a email every time somebody has updated either of these two fields. So we'll create a new bot. And suggestion, again, there it is, that AIML. When a new employee's record is created, we'll send a notification. That sounds like what I want, but I'll tweak it. So I don't want this to happen just on ads. I want it to happen on updates. And again, because I only made those two fields updatable, I don't need to worry about any other sort of guardrails. So we'll do that. We'll do an update. And what I want to happen, I want to send an email. I'll call out some of these things like creating a new file. So you could imagine when somebody hits the save button, generate a report of whatever form they filled out, and then also CC the manager for some reason. We'll touch on a couple of those use cases. So I will just send this to myself. Cool. And yeah, so we can change the default content. I can just say skills have been updated. Out. And some fancy stuff you can do here is similar to what I did with the behavior, where I can use the data fields themselves. I can do something similar and pick out exactly what skill was updated, who updated it, what time, and all those fancy little metadata features. So let me go ahead and save that. And let's go back to the app. Cool. So here's Billy. Billy has just learned JavaScript. So we'll put that in there, click save, refresh the application. And if I share now my inbox, so this is that email that I sent it to. I got that email that says, hey, skills have been updated, come check it out. So you could imagine I could put in a template here every time that something changes. I can load a custom template that my design or marketing team has created and maybe send that out to my users.
Fantastic. No longer afraid to ask developers for changes to applications that they built for me. That's awesome. Excellent.
Awesome. So I think now that we've answered that question, we've played around with the UI, we've seen some of what we can do with it, and just how quickly we were able to spin up an application off of a very general and generic, I guess, description. So now what's left is, okay, what does it actually look like on the phone? And what can we actually do besides these little features that we've seen? So I will click on the deployment process just so you can see what it's like. But I won't actually do it because it might take some time, and we only have a certain amount of time with all of you folks. So I'll just join this meeting from my phone and start sharing from there. So 1 second while I get that working. Great. So I've joined from my phone. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing and switch the sharing over to my mobile device. Okay, you all should be seeing my device. So I've loaded up that same application to my phone. If I click on skills, that's that application. So again, this is that same thing that we just did. I can click on these employees, change the information, see these images, but what I want to call attention to is the actions. If I click on call, it'll just take me to the phone's built-in phone system, and I can just send the call there. Similarly, I can shoot off a quick text message to that person and tell them, hey, I need your help, or whatever I might need to do to get in touch with them. So that's that application. But again, of course, we don't want to leave you hanging with what else can we do? We prepared a couple more applications. So the second example will be, can we take this whole employee application a little bit further? And so this application will actually help with onboarding. So providing all of your new employees some resources, some documentation, perhaps forms that they need to fill out. And additionally, let's jump in there. Things like dashboarding. So this is AppSheet just generating some dashboarding metrics based off some sort of report statistics. And I can do things like checking out my profile and updating my team directory. So very similar kind of use case. You can just see a little bit more features that you have access to. So we'll hop off of that one and we'll switch gears now to do something a little bit more fancy. What else can we integrate with AppSheet? So example number 3, and we'll give it a sync, quick second to sync. So this is an application for showing how you might be able to do reporting. So send something to someone, get an approval, rejection, and then be able to take some action based off that. So this is me as a manager of a company that I get requests to approve either purchase orders or manufacturing suppliers, something like that. So let me create a new request. We have a need for a table fixing in the kitchen. And I will include some supporting notes here and attach a quick picture. Or I could just send a link. And you can see, for example, here, this is one of those new features that, hey, I can just throw in a picture or a file there, and you can process it in whatever way you feel you might need to. So let me go ahead and click Save. And let me ask my reviewer, let's say Sarah, save that. And now what's going to happen is if Sarah is using this same application, Sarah will get a request where it says for review, where it's saying, hey, Kevin requested you to check out this thing for the table fix. So let me check that out. There's that report. I can see who sent it and what details were attached to it. And then I, as the person that has to handle this transaction, I could either add a comment here saying won't fix that, or I could, let's say, not approve that because, I don't want to fix the table that's broken in the kitchen. We're planning on renovating either way. So let me save that. And then we can go back here and boom, that thing would now move over to the not approved section. Great. So now let's do the final one, the one that has a little bit more things going on, a little bit more exciting features. This is our facility inspection application. So this one is a little bit more quote unquote fully developed, has more integrations. One thing to call out here is mapping feature. I have no idea how to develop a map. I don't know what code I need to write to put all these different locations in a map. All this is doing is there's a spreadsheet that has location, so addresses, and Google just said, hey, you have locations here. Let's just give you a map with those different pinpoints. So I can tap on those. And these are areas that I, as an inspector, commonly have to go in and check up on. So for this example, we will just go to our distribution facility, click on that. And today we're going to be inspecting the product bins area. So I'll click inspect. And this is a very simple form that you might see people filling out on paper in a little binder, and then having to scan it, submit it, or do something with it. So is this area well lit? We'll say yes. Surfaces are clean, not very. Garbage was emptied. Yes. The doors do not lock, but it's overall not organized. So as a result, I have to fail this inspection, and I will just put a quick little inspection point image to point out what I'm talking about. So here's another one of those new features. I can just ask for a picture, and I can just take a quick photo. So let's say right there, that's the area that I'm inspecting. We'll save that. And the notes are, it's messy, random Clorox box. Next. Cool. So now as a manager, I have to sign off on this, right? There needs to be some accountability as to who's doing what. And so AppSheet lets me do things like signatures. I can tap on it and I can just say, hey, yep, we're signing off on this. All good. Save that. Cool. So now that I have that done, in the background, what is happening is there's a process that will generate an email, generate a form with that failed report, and CC maybe people ops or whoever needs to be involved with this. And I'll show you that as soon as I do get that. But with that, that is pretty much showcasing everything that we wanted to touch on during the time of this demo. There's, of course, a lot more that we can talk about. And if we have the time, and of course, with the questions, we can delve into them a little bit deeper. But right now, what you saw is just, hey, here's how we would develop an application based off of this idea. We didn't need to write any code at all. We deployed it on an application. On a mobile phone, and we didn't have to worry about what's this going to look like. Do I have to wait for this to be responsive? Do I have to develop this for different sizes? Nope, just one click, one deploy, and the app is done. So let me go back to the meeting and I will stop sharing that. Stop sharing. Great.
Back.
So now that we have that going, let's hop back to the presentation to go over some actual client examples and discuss a little bit more about how we're using AppSheet. So here's one that I want to call attention to. This is BHI. BHI is a US-based manufacturing company. And so many of their own customers require that they do site inspections and report their progress multiple times a day. So with just one AppSheet application, they were able to run BHI. They were able to run that inspection in the field and send automated reports to the customer, which ultimately they reduced their 2-hour process down to 6 minutes, which in turn saved them an average of over $50,000 a month. Similarly, BHI uses AppSheet for fleet management. So for a little bit of context, BHI has over 170 trucks. And within 2 months of purchasing brand new trucks, 2 of them had to be replaced because there was no easy way for truck drivers to report issues and obtain approval for repairs. So what did they do? They just created an app so that drivers could do the inspections, receive approvals, and this led to 20 to 30 hours of freed up time per week for the manager of the fleet. So this allowed her to focus on other pressing issues while people were free to just use the application for that process. So overall, BHI has freed up to 10% of its budget by replacing software with AppSheet, and they've built over 100 different applications in less than 2 years.
That is pretty impressive, actually. And Kevin, thank you for those demos. Certainly inspiring. I mean, here at Wursta, we sort of have just started to scratch the surface on AppSheet. I've spent most of my minimal development skills are in AppScript, where I have to build my own UIs or use sheets as container-bound scripts and things like that. So being able to put visuals in front of these is truly fantastic. We're like I mentioned, starting to use it here at Wursta as well. We've developed a couple of applications that replace, to your point earlier, replacing those sort of ad hoc, mostly over Google Chat type processes, right? Somebody internally needs maybe a new laptop for a new hire, things like that. So we've started to take and formalize all of those processes internally, and build AppSheet request forms for them, have them feed out to the right groups for procurement purposes, as well as go off to managers, things like that for approvals. So I'm excited to, based on what I've seen today, to implement even more around AppSheet. Curious, does Google, dog food or eat its own when in terms of AppSheet? Do you use it internally for any use cases?
Yeah, great question. So we actually have about 5 or 6 use cases off the top of my head that I can think of. The most recent one is one for our employee resource group. So OLA is our group of Hispanic and Latinx community supporters, which is the largest across Google. And so they have this big group chat where people constantly are coming onto Google and saying, hey, I'm new here. Can somebody help me find this? Or can somebody help me get used to how to use this particular tool? So there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of threads, a lot of lost messages,
Mm-hmm.
and things that just have to go back and forth. So somebody sat down and said, hey, this could be an app. So this person, not a developer, not a tech person at all, just sat down with AppSheet and made a one-on-one coaching / mentor-mentee application. So essentially now people can log into the AppSheet app, sign up as a mentor, mentee, coachee, and start having all of these conversations where they can set up calendar invites with Google Meetings and start having these discussions, tracking these questions that need to be answered, all through this one application that is tailored for them and their own connections, as opposed to throwing everything into one big group chat.
Interesting. Lots of great use cases. I'm curious, especially for those who have not heard of AppSheet before or used it. Seeing any of this today, do you see yourself using AppSheet in the future, or how do you see yourself using AppSheet in the future? I think we're going to put a poll in the chat there for anybody that wants to take a second. Let's pull up that poll and see some real-time results. Steve's AppSheet. We're getting some vote for project management. Excellent. Lots of project management seems to be a big one, and similarly, I told the story around sort of like new hire request forms that we're using AppSheet for project management as well. Requesting updates from engineers and things like that on projects. Certainly, some great use cases for project management. Excellent, excellent. All great use cases, and all of which Wursta can help with. As part of my organization here, Digital Workplace internally at Wursta, we also offer a number of professional services, including low code, no code development services. So integrating with AppSheet, helping you build your apps. An AppSheet is designed for the non-IT person to be able to pick it up and run with it. But we often find that using Wursta or helping customers along can springboard them into even greater AppSheet development. So reach out to your sales rep if you have any questions on our development sprints. If you just like to talk about scoping a potential project, we'd be happy to jump on a call and sort of talk about what the technicals are and what it would take to develop that app at no cost. And just a quick question or a quick comment on how AppSheet is offered from a product standpoint. AppSheet is a standalone product, so you do not need to be on platform with Google Workspace in order to leverage all the great features and functionality of AppSheet. So if you're on 365 or some other random collaboration suite, you can use AppSheet. As an Enterprise Plus customer, you do get access to AppSheet Core free of charge. That is included with your licensing, so you can get started today if you are on Enterprise. There are 2 additional paid tiers, AppSheet Enterprise Standard and AppSheet Enterprise Plus, both of which offer some additional features and functionality over its core counterpart. Most of those features and functionality revolve around connectors. So there was a question, and I'll use this as a segue to answer one of the questions that came in. Jim asked a question about REST models. So connecting to third-party APIs in REST model is supported. You can do that through AppSheet. The higher SKUs will allow for some of those connections, including existing database connections. So if you have a MySQL connection or a data set that lives outside of Google Sheet, those higher tiered SKUs from AppSheet will offer you the ability to connect to those services. There was a question around external users as well, and I'll use this as an opportunity to answer that question as well. Connecting to external users is possible through the Enterprise Plus. And Kevin, keep me honest here, because all of the apps I've developed have been internal. AppSheet does support external users, but you do need to be on the Enterprise Plus SKU. And there is a specific type of license that you would need for an enterprise or for an external user for an application that you've built internally. So it is supported, does require a bit of licensing. And if you are on only AppSheet Core today, you may need to look at those higher SKUs in order to accomplish that. Your Google rep or your Wursta rep, if you are through Wursta, can help you through the details of that. So I think I knocked out a couple of those questions, but let's move on here. And just to recap everything that we talked about today, we talked about the benefits of AppSheet. We took a great look, really in-depth look at some possible use cases of AppSheet and really how easy it is to build a very sort of basic and advanced app, things like signature collections and things like that. So, some of those more advanced features, but very intuitive to include in your applications. Talked a little bit about the templates and automations and different plan types. If anybody has any additional questions, please feel free to post them in the chat or the Q&A module. With that said, before we actually get into questions, let's just like to take a minute to share information about our upcoming events. We have a Beyond Corp webinar on Thursday, June 16th. Our CISO and Google, I think, will be both co-hosting that one. All of our past webinars are also available on our resources page, so wursta.com/about/resources, I think, as well as our YouTube channel. There's a link for the June 16th event that will be posted in chat if you would like to register. And as mentioned earlier, we are here to help you. We can guide you through AppSheet. Your Wursta rep will be reaching out to schedule a quick call to go over those details and to debrief on today's webinar. We would also love your feedback. So if you have a minute, there's a link in the chat to complete a short survey. Tell us what you think about today's session. We'd love the feedback. We use all of the feedback to help steer our future webinars. So please feel free to submit that feedback. With that, we will jump into Q&A. I think I knocked a couple of them out, but let me make sure I got them all. Let's see. So Fred asked about creating an app that can monitor a Gmail inbox and take some sort of action on that incoming email. AppSheet does support AppScript functionality as well. So those are that's the utility, Fred, that I've built out in AppScript. So yes, a combination of all those can absolutely help steer you towards some automated solution for incoming email. I just actually had to develop one through AppScript. I did that one, but it was to parse and look for certain subject lines, and then I had to do a whole bunch of things. So reach out if you need any assistance with that project. Kyle asked, and Kevin, I may defer to you on this one. Is there a set delay time or a way to alter that delay on the amount of time that the app changes sync? So Kyle, you asked this question, and just a follow-up question, I guess. Are you talking about the development piece, or when when somebody's user or using the application itself? I don't know if Kevin, you see that question in chat, but I guess I'm a little confused on the question.
Yeah, so I followed up on the same chat message. My understanding is, that time that it takes for the application to actually sync between here's when I do an action, submit a form, whatever, for that response to be accepted. So there's a couple things that we can do. There's some cloud caching that you can offload. You can set up things like parallel processing, background syncs to help alleviate that. And I linked to a support article there on some of those different ways that you could accomplish
Beautiful.
improving the
Thank you.
speed.
I didn't scroll down far enough. Thank you, Kevin. Much appreciated. I answered the licensing question from Russell. Thank you there. And then just going over to the QA module here. Jim asked about the REST model. Yes, AppSheet does support REST models. AppSheet has a REST model in itself, so you can tap into AppSheet from an external API as well. So it can go both ways. Jeremiah asked, what sort of dev QA prod configs does this support? And Kevin, you may have a more sophisticated answer for me than I. The way I've handled staging in dev is just to have a duplicate app. So I'll play around with one, use that as my sandbox. That is a separate data set, although I keep those data sets in sync. If I'm using something like a Google Sheet, I will keep my data sets in sync using like an import range or something like that. But typically what I do for staging or dev model is just create a second app. I don't know if Kevin, you have any better tricks of the trade.
No, that's commonly how I've been playing around with that as well. I will only just add the use of data partitions to make that a little bit easier. But outside of that, pretty much on point.
Excellent. Vincent asked a great question. Any best practice on managing these app sheets so they are supported, managed, and tested? If we start running somewhat critical business processes, it's probably best to catalog them and manage them, provide some IT oversight. I'll take first crack at this, and then again, Kevin, I'll defer to you for any pro tips. But a couple of ways I'll answer this, Vincent. One, if you are going to empower your non-technical teams to create IT apps or AppSheet apps, using AppSheet maybe to create some sort of process where IT can then onboard them from a support perspective, right? So empower your users, that user that's created some function, some utility, some widget, you should establish some sort of process internally so the the technical teams can review and then support, put support models around that. So if your service desk, for example, needs to know how to answer a question around that app, you're going to have a process for that. Now, I've seen AppSheet used to facilitate that process, so that could be one way to do that. The other way, if you are going to make this an IT only function, which one of my customers have done, they have limited access to their non-IT teams to create apps. All of the whole organization can access the apps, but in that model, it's a little bit more streamlined. But either way, you need a process to support that. I don't know if Kevin, you have anything, maybe how Google is doing it internally. Any sort of review or request process when a non-IT or an IT person does publish a new app?
Yeah, I don't think
Thanks,
I'm
Vincent.
as familiar with any of the features outside of kind of what you mentioned, Patrick. That's not an area that I've, have my ear to the ground. But it sounds, that strategy that you're using, that's kind of, I would hope, how we're kind of doing it. So
Excellent, excellent. And Vincent commented that it looks like I hit that question right, so thank you for that. Jonathan Jackson, how does offline access work for the apps? It's not uncommon that our field teams are at a location without service. Again, I'll take first crack and defer to the expert here. Offline is supported. I did an app for a customer a couple months back that required, similar to what you were doing, Kevin, with the signature capture. But these people were flying in planes, so they had no internet access. So we were able to do that in AppSheet. But yes, offline is supported. I don't know if there's any watch points or gotchas on the offline that I'm not aware of, Kevin.
yeah, so just a couple quick notes on that. You can still use it because the data that is needed to run the app is stored locally on that device. So you can still use it and play around with it. A couple of things. The syncing that we were talking about earlier, you can actually delay that until you actually choose to resync. So all those changes will just be queued up. And then when you decide to sync, it'll just push those changes. Similarly, if you're viewing content offline, this is kind of where it gets a little bit different because obviously we don't want to save all the images and the documents to your device since they can be rather large. But you can enable offline caching, content caching. So you can tell AppSheet, hey, keep a copy of this the first time you load it and just keep it cached. And then
Excellent.
similar for maps as well. It uses the device GPS, so you won't actually be able to display the position in the map while the app is offline.
Okay. Makes sense. It's like Google Maps, how it works offline now, right? So I don't get lost when I don't have a internet connection. Excellent. Jonathan, I hope that answered your question. And I think that is the end of the questions that I see. Yep, thanks. Great. Thanks, Jonathan. Great. I think we're just about time. We're great on timing today. We do have a couple more minutes here if anybody has any additional questions. Excellent.